Welcome to Applied Innovation.
Hi, and welcome to Go Live from Capgemini Applied Innovation Exchange in San Francisco. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Andreas, and I lead the Applied Innovation team. This session is being recorded, and we'll post it online afterwards, and we'll have a conversation and share a lot of content. So also want to engage with you in Q&A, so use the interface for that. Also, because this is a live session with panelists, the views expressed here are not official COVID-19 comments. Today's theme is Rising to the Challenge, Simplify with Technology. And I'm joined by two extraordinary leaders whom I will introduce in a minute. First, we hope you're all in a safe environment. These are unprecedented times. Our number one priority is to look after our people and their families, our clients and business partners. While we may need to maintain a safe physical distance, it's never been so important for us to ensure strong social connections. Today, relationships matter more than ever. So that said, our theme today is Rising to the Challenge, and our guest panelists today are Ido Gino. Ido is an accomplished entrepreneur, the CEO and founder of Rapid API. Rapid API is the world's largest API marketplace. Ido has an interesting life journey from Israel to the US, 2018 Thiel Fellow and Forbes 30 Under 30 list maker. Welcome, Ido.
Yeah, thanks, Andreas, and thank you for having me. Excited for this discussion today, and I just want to echo your words. I hope everybody is home and safe and are supposed to get through this this crisis that is, as you said, unprecedented.
Yeah, really great to have you. I'm glad you could join, Ido. I also welcome Michiel Bureel. Michiel is the Sogeti Chief Technology Officer, joining in now from Amsterdam. Michiel is a world-recognized thought leader with over 30 years in the industry. He leads the Sogeti research initiatives and many more things. Welcome, Michiel.
Hi, Andreas. Happy to be here. Likewise, it's quite strange for me to be at home for once in a while. So we see how this is going to evolve, right?
Yeah, I know you have hundreds of travel days per year, but now we're staying home. Yeah. So to tee this off, the context is, as we said, unprecedented. It seems that the abilities that always have been important are now critical. Michiel, my first question is for you. You know, as you've seen also, many organizations are today obviously in crisis management, and eventually, as we see in some parts of the world, we're heading into recovery and post-recovery. What is your perspective on the current situation?
Well, yeah, I'm as confused and as surprised probably as everybody else. At the same time, I'm happy to see how fast people and companies are able to improvise. The schools in the Netherlands have closed a couple of days ago on Monday, and what you see is that people are adjusting, but the schools are still educating the children despite of the fact that they don't go to school. So people are extremely able to improvise. At the same time, from a technology point of view, I'm quite happy to see already lots of innovation going on. I can mention a company called In Silico Medicine. It's a company that combines genomics, big data analytics, and deep learning and they have created this generative chemistry where they use GANs, generative adversarial networks, right? You have two AIs, a generator and a discriminator, and they're using this technology to speed up the process of finding new drugs for diseases. And I'm happy to see that they've open sourced their technology so that everybody in this profession can join and use their technologies to speed up the finding a new drug for this new virus. So I'm quite hopeful that technology will help us here tremendously.
Yeah. So during this Go Live session, we're going to share many more encouraging examples of organizations and individuals who are rising to the challenge. Ido, what are your thoughts about the current situation?
Yeah, I think as Michiel said, it's a difficult, it's unprecedented situation. I think we're seeing a couple of things. First of all, if you think about how we as humanity are actually handling the situation right now, I think we're seeing for the first time, actually, to some extent, and obviously this crisis is far from over and is going to last for, unfortunately, a longer time, but we're already seeing in certain ways how technology is already winning, or at least giving a pretty strong battle to nature. If you think even like 20 years ago, if this were to happen, so 2000, year 2000, handling this kind of situation would be a lot more difficult in terms of sharing information, getting news out there to people, enforcing certain regulation, and even just being able to understand and treat the virus. And now in 2020, what we're seeing is within weeks of this showing up, we used RNA sequencers to sequence the whole DNA. We're able to identify a lot of the features of the virus. We're able to get information used very fast to people using Twitter and social networks and things like that. And now we're even seeing in places like Paris where they're enforcing the lockdowns using drones in the streets. So all of this is very futuristic and already showing how technology is helping us win over crises like this. But I think that at the same time, for a lot of traditional businesses, what we're seeing, and we're seeing this across many of our customers too at Rapid, is a lot of the basic assumptions that they have based their businesses and the way they deliver their services on are getting torn apart. So if you think about it, you know, people are social creatures. That used to be a base assumption. Well, not anymore. Now we have social distancing. Open borders, travel, that being a basic premise that you can base businesses on in areas like travel and conferences and things like that. That premise is gone now. Being able to meet in person or come to the office in terms of productivity and ways of working, that premise is gone. So businesses basically have to adapt very quickly to a very different set of circumstances, and the cost of not adapting is dying.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's interesting, and also this is what I've seen to frame that a little bit. The last couple of weeks, as I've engaged with clients and business partners, colleagues, that some key characteristics seem to stand out in where we see this kind of momentum picking up now. And for example, the ability to dynamically and quickly look ahead and adapt and reframing efforts. Obviously, dynamics are changing faster now than ever before. So using an adaptive bottom-up approach to complement the top-down effort. I mean, obviously, coordinated responses require top-down leadership, but this type of unpredictable change also requires decentralized initiative taking. And I think what we're seeing, these examples that we will continue to explore in this conversation, are more or less actually the result of these bottom-up approaches where teams are rising to the challenge and implementing new ideas quickly. And simplifying technology, as you said or alluded to, Ido, is absolutely part of that, to quickly apply impactful innovation. That means just looking at technology as an enabler and a piece of the puzzle to address many of these challenges. So, Michiel, over to you. I think one interesting aspect of the conversation is, particularly down to the simplifying technology aspect. So simplifying technology in order to realize tangible value. What's your view on that? I know you have prepared a few thoughts and possibly some slides around that topic as well.
Yeah, yeah. Now, so I will share my screen in just a moment to show you some pictures. But of course, first, of course, when we think about simplifying, we have to understand, and that's one of the lessons that I know from my career, that simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication, right? So simplifying things is never easy. It's a very sophisticated process, but then the benefits of having a unified platform for agility, for movement, for innovation is of course worth all this effort. Now let me share my screen. Let's see if it all works like it should work. So Andreas, can you see my very busy slide?
Yes, it looks great as usual, Mikkel.
Yeah. So what I've been doing over the last, I would say, 25 years, I've constantly looked at this road ahead in technology, and I'm always asking this question, the so what question, as I call it. Now, to answer this question of yours about simplify, I've looked at two studies that we have done in the last couple of years. One is about design to disrupt, and the other is about digital happiness, the most recent one about digital happiness. Now, what we have to realize is that when we think about digital, it's all about giving customers what they want as fast as you possibly can. And so it's all about acceleration, it's all about customer obsession, and it's all about building an organization that is able to innovate at the speed of technology change, but maybe more importantly at the speed of behavior change. And so one of the reports that we wrote, Synthetic Generation, really looks at this behavioral aspect of a Generation Z that is coming of age. And with that, they bring new values, a further shift in values. They bring very new, sometimes difficult to understand behavior, and they bring huge expectations. And of course, organizations in their digital transformation have to make sure that they meet those expectations. Now, when we then look at one of the inspiring people, one of the ways where I look for inspiration, this is a very interesting motto, and maybe some of you recognize it. It's improvise, adapt, and overcome. And really it comes from the US Marines, right? It is being confronted with a unpredicted situation, with a black swan, like this pandemic, but in many cases, all of these things bring surprises. You first improvise, and then the more difficult part comes to adapt to a new normal, to a new situation. And if you're successful, then of course you overcome. Now, to do that, we have looked very much at Gary Hamel, right? One of the largest management gurus. And basically what he says is that organizations are held back in their speed of innovation by their management culture in itself, right? We have innovated over the last 100 years, everything within organizations, from technology to processes, to products, to services. But the only thing that hasn't moved very much is the way that we manage those enterprises. And so when he talks about building the innovation-ready enterprise, he talks about these 7 principles, which are very much the style of leadership or the cultural changes that are required in organizations. And so it's about, very similar to the agile movement, it's about creating autonomous teams that really serve the customer's needs in a very direct way. And the way that you manage that has to be quite different. Now, then if we look further, when I look at organizations, they are all building these, what I call digital assets. Digital assets that increase the maneuvering and the agility and the speed of change within organizations. And I see 4. First, of course, a unified digital platform. A unified digital platform with microservice architectures, with cloud, with API integration strategies, etc. And then on top of that, we see this agile solution delivery, right? The speed and the ability to explore and experiment for applied innovation, because we are already arrived in this unpredictable world where we are very much dependent on the behavior of customers to know what we're going to build. And so prediction doesn't work anymore. And so you have to prepare for experimentation. Then on top of that agile solution delivery, of course, it's all about advanced analytics capability, AI, artificial intelligence, and human intelligence to understand customers' needs, preferences, and behavior.
If you just pause there for 1 second, Michaela, because this is a really interesting thread here. So when we modeled this like a while back ago, what you're seeing here, the unified digital platform layer, and you mentioned the API layer, and I mean, foundationally, what we are seeing now in many of the responses that organizations and companies take to address the challenges, underneath that is a dynamic, loosely coupled, agile platform or agile supporting platform built on top of a number of different sets of APIs. And that's why also we decided to bring Rapid API in and the architecture that Rapid API represents, so to speak. So it's a foundational aspect of being able to move quickly and at the end of the day then address the actual business problems out there today. So yeah.
No, for sure. And of course we have to realize that API, it doesn't stand on its own, right? In combination with cloud, in combination with security and quality by design, that's when you get the acceleration of the speed of innovation within an organization.
Right.
And then on top of that, when you have unified this digital platform, then you can start thinking about this advanced analytics capability, agile solution delivery. And then last but not least, bringing IT and business together, right? In the most advanced organizations, it starts to become very difficult to draw a line between IT and business. They become intertwined. They become the same, right? The whole organization moves to this new biz DevOps way of working where you have pretty autonomous agile teams delivering value for customers. Yeah. So that's kind of what we called in our report the unorganization, not the non-organization or disorganization, but the unorganization, how to unorganized for reducing complexity. Now to finish my my ideas here, I have one more idea that I want to share. And that's of course built on our good colleague DJ Bonnet, who published this book together with MIT a couple of years ago, where he did some research amongst organizations, large organizations, incumbent organizations, organizations like the rest of us, dealing with digital transformation. And what he proved, and we intuitively already know this, is that research proved is that it's not enough to only grow the digital intensity or investing in technology, but at the same rate, you have to be able to change the organization and the way that you manage it, because then only you will become what he calls a digerati or a digital master, which yes, creates more revenue through new channels, but also increases the profitability. If you get stuck in only spending money on technology, you become a fashionista, which might generate some new business, but will do it at a much lower profitability because they're over-investing in technology. They're using technologies in many different silos, and so they're not unifying the platform and therefore not reducing the complexity and not creating simplicity. Now, what I believe, although I respect the work very much, especially when we look at this new generation, Generation Z and the millennials to some extent becoming of age, becoming the customer of the future and the employee of the future, we need to add one more dimension to this discussion. Basically, so this is the picture that I use for that. So you still see here this transformation intensity and digital intensity where you get the digerati and the versionistas. But then at the same time, organizations have to look at purpose, because we are entering this purpose economy where organizations in their digital transformation have to create a new narrative of the value that they bring in the digital society, value not only to themselves, but to all the stakeholders in modern society. So that's what I have for you, Andreas.
Yes. Okay. So thank you. That's really interesting, but I think I'll take away from that is obviously the intensified context we are in today, where as you point out, digital intensity on one axis and the leadership capabilities on the other axis. It's even more true today that investing in the right technology today to address these challenges and also address the right types of topics around leadership capabilities and how to lead in today's context is obviously even more important. So thank you
for sure. So one of the challenges that I see when I visit customers, I see two things often. One is what I call innovation tourism. So it is looking at new technology for the technology itself, and then forgetting that you have to integrate it into the operational processes of your organization, and you have to do it in a unified, connected way, right? All these technologies have to fit together. That's also why I don't believe in this bimodal IT kind of thinking, because the challenge is not to create two IT departments. The challenge is to combine all the new stuff with the old stuff, with the not the legacy system, but the operational core systems.
Right.
The other thing that I see is when you look at innovation, it's easy to create innovation at the periphery of your organization. It's much harder to do it at the core of your organization. And so the challenge of applied innovation, I think, is to do it at the core of your organization. So how do you increase the capacity to accelerate and to do quick innovation at the core of your operation, not at the periphery?
Right. And again, this is the thought I have is that these are truths before a pandemic or when we're not in a crisis management situation, and these are truths that are maybe even more intensified during. So Ido, when it comes to the Rapid API platform, what we see platforms like that enables businesses and organizations to quickly assemble new solutions, or in other words, actually simplifying technology. And from most of the most encouraging examples that we see now from organizations addressing their challenges, really hard challenges, we see an efficient use of these types of functions or components that APIs represent. So can you walk us through what Rapid API is and position that in your perspective and views?
Yeah, definitely. And I also have a couple of things to share here, so I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen as well. Many things changed in the past 4 weeks. Slides have not changed that much since the pandemic started. But yeah, I think the introduction by Michiel was great. What we're seeing right now is a big crisis that calls for a very fast reaction from companies. And I think that this also kind of puts a new angle on what we're seeing with innovation. And what that angle is I actually remember seeing a talk by Reed Hastings once, the CEO of Netflix. And one of the questions to him was like, Netflix is a huge company. It's for many of the past years, it's been a public company with pretty high revenue, and they've been able to pivot the entire company multiple times. First, from doing predominantly DVD delivery and mail-driven content delivery to doing it online with streaming, and then from streaming other people's content to actually becoming a content production company and being one of the biggest investors in new content production globally. and getting there pretty quickly. And the question was, how were you able to innovate and change the course of the company so quickly? And the answer that he gave, which was really something that I really took away from that panel, was the reason we're able to innovate so quickly because it was innovate or die, right? If you think about the digital age, they started by doing DVD, like sending DVDs via the mail. But in the digital age, when people are in the internet, nobody's going to wait for their package to arrive with the DVD. So if it's not digital and if it's not streaming, nobody will use Netflix. And then after they became a streaming company, when streaming technology became commodity, all the studios started doing streaming themselves. They realized, hey, if we don't produce our own content, our library is going to be empty and we'll die too. So the choice that they were facing was innovate and die, or innovate or die. And I think that what's happening now with this COVID-19 crisis is a lot of companies, and in an unprecedented scale, are facing a similar choice. You have to either very quickly shift or change fundamental truths about your business and how you're conducting it, or the business is not going to be around for much longer. And I think I've brought some examples of what we're seeing companies doing already. But one of the examples that I thought about this morning, so I'm based out of San Francisco. One of the only Starbucks that are still open is actually across the street from me. But they're not open like a normal Starbucks. They completely shifted from a walk-in and sit-around store to mobile orders only. They changed the layout of the store so they deliver the coffee outside so nobody has to walk in and get infected. And one of the things that struck me about it is, if you think about Starbucks, it's a 300,000 person organization built around people buying in the store and coming into the store and sitting around. That's the basis of how Starbucks is delivering their service. And they were able, in the course of a couple of weeks, to completely shift in a massive scale how they sell coffee, which is the core of what they do. So these are the kind of reactions that we're seeing companies doing very quickly. And I think that, again, for a 100,000 person or 300,000 person organization to do that in a matter of weeks with no huge training, seminars, and change management plan is unprecedented for sure. And some of the other technological reactions we're already seeing from other companies are, if you look at some of the organizations managing this from a health perspective, creating a lot of dashboarding and data sharing mechanism to be able to surface more data around how this pandemic is playing out. We're seeing technology companies like Alphabet, the parent company of Google, already releasing some tools to help people get tested and manage how they're personally reacting to this crisis. And then this is just one example, but this is, I think, a whole category of companies that we're seeing here, where they're actually changing. Companies that are relying on in-person delivery of their services are completely changing how they're doing that. And one example that I brought here is a lot of health or fitness companies that are changing to from physical classes to online classes and have been able to do that pretty quickly. And more broadly speaking, I think that this is not a net new initiative or not a new trend. A lot of companies and a lot of industries have been going through digital transformation and fundamentally shifting how they deliver their products and services for the past few years. We've seen this with, around food, with food delivery. Retail has been completely disrupted with e-commerce, media and entertainment going through streaming, VR, and many other trends. But again, what I think is just happening is a very quick acceleration of that. And to be able to meet that acceleration, and this kind of ties into what Mikhail was talking about too, to be able to meet that acceleration or react to it, people have to think about a new product development journey and to rethink about how they're creating new products and services. And the reason for that is, if you think about how a traditional product, mostly a physical product that's being created, has been developed, there is a pretty well-defined life cycle, right? You go through research, design, prototyping, testing, setting up the manufacturing and the supply chain, sourcing the material, then manufacturing, and then shipping and distribution. And the problem with this cycle, I mean, this is how products have been made since the first time somebody made a knife from a piece of stone. But the problem with that cycle is that it's very long. And if you think about crises or looking at crises like what's happening now as an opportunity window, by the time you're actually able to get something out there and get it in market, it's taken too long. With traditional software development, we're seeing a slight shortening of that process, mostly because you don't have the whole idea of manufacturing, sourcing materials and things, but it's still very linear and sequential. And what we're seeing now, and because of that linearity, you still might slip out of that opportunity window. What we're seeing now with modern software delivery is a much more iterative process where you do the research and the design in parallel, you start developing it in parallel, and do quick iteration cycles, testing happening, and you can actually get to a live product a lot more quickly and deliver those services within the opportunity window to actually be able to react fast to changes. And then obviously keep improving and refining those services. So then the question comes, well, what do we need to be able to deliver modern software? And in what we're seeing from the companies that we work with, there are three key components that actually go into building that capability. The first one is, getting the right culture and mindset. And some of the, key tags that we're seeing around that are done is better than perfect. So getting things out there to customers and getting it in their hands quickly is the most important priority. And then, we release and iterate it over time. The second key component that we're seeing is around building the right team and getting the right skills. And there we're seeing threads like agile development and being able to build small squads that are very iterative. And again, I think this ties into a lot of what Mikhail was talking about earlier that you were seeing with companies. And lastly, and this is kind of where Rapid and the API economy as a whole ties in, it's around creating the right tools and access to data and information for team members. So thinking about cloud, SaaS, and self-service solutions, and making sure to provide access to data and functionality to developers. And this is really where we see APIs as very powerful. So just to give a second on what that looks like, APIs, for those not aware, are basically basic building blocks or Lego pieces that software can be constructed from. So if you think about some of the core functionality that goes into a program, instead of making developers build those from scratch, so things like being able to send text messages or process credit cards, instead of building that from scratch, you can basically leverage existing APIs and build on top of them. And we're seeing this both as external services from other companies. So for SMS, you have companies like Twilio, Nexmo. For emailing, you have SendGrid, Mailgun, and so many other companies in other spaces. And they provide those services so you can tie into it and embed them into your application. But also companies internally where you have certain teams creating APIs and exposing them to other teams within the company. So they can leverage those in creating new services. So that's the overall trend that we're seeing with API. We've seen a huge shift to relying more heavily on APIs over the past 10 to 15 years, with IBM actually predicting the API economy to be a $2.2 trillion space within the next 10 years. And we've already seen multiple quite large companies created around providing these APIs. And then just very briefly, in terms of Rapid API and what we do, we're a platform that developers and companies use to manage and connect to APIs. So developers use Rapid to discover APIs, both the internal APIs within their companies, as well as APIs by external services, being able to very easily connect to them and then monitor and analyze the connection. But the way it ties into what we're talking about is when we want to innovate and create new services, using a platform like this to have access more easily to the APIs that already exist is fundamental in being able to leverage them and develop on top of them quickly.
I think you're on mute, Andreas.
Yes, I was on mute. Now I'm unmuted. There you go. Thank you. So if you go back to that slide, maybe the what do we need for modern software, though, just being interested to have some remarks there. We of course we see really key topics in innovation proficiency centered in and around culture and mindset, of course, organizational culture, approach to innovation. Obviously, ways of working, meaning software excellence in team and skills. It's fundamentally what we see, obviously, today as organizations quickly assemble teams and resources to address these unprecedented challenges. What was true before all of this happened is even more true today. What are your thoughts about that, Mikhail?
Well, I think that we are pretty much aligned what Ido is saying, what I'm saying. Maybe Ido is implementing it in a more technical way, but we are saying the same. And what's interesting is that when you talk to organizations, whether you talk to the IT side of the company or the marketing people or let's say the leadership, they all see kind of the same shift. The only thing is they use different words for it. And of course you have to bridge that. If you look at like what I used, the example of Gary Hamel, he talks about the necessity for management innovation. So innovate the way that we lead organizations, that we manage organizations. Then, of course, everybody knows this story from the marketing perspective where we talk about the lean startup, right? The Eric Ries book that he published a couple of years ago about how do you work as a large organization? How do you start working more as a startup? So that's the vocabulary that is used within the marketing department. And then within the IT role, we talk about agile and DevOps. But if you then go one step deeper and you look actually at what the transformations are, what the changes are that these organizations are trying to accomplish, they are pretty much the same. It is about autonomy. It's about shortening the cycle. It's about reuse. It's about connecting all the initiatives in the organization much more. And so what's interesting is that an organization, they need to bring it together, right? It doesn't make any sense to try to implement an agile DevOps way of working in an organization that is still very old-fashionedly managed, because then it wouldn't work, right? And so it's about changing the culture and mindset. So I'm happy with that sense. But that's, of course, not only we need it for modern software, we need it for modern organizations, or for what I call unorganizations, where you need to change the culture, the mindset, and the style of leadership is a very important carrier of the organizational culture, right? So.
Right. Ido, I didn't mean to disrupt there. Was that your last slide, or do you want to pick it up from there? I think you're on mute now.
Yeah. No, I was able to go through the whole flow. So, yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you. So, again, like the last slide that you showed on the APIs directory is a good illustration of what this can look like. Of course, both internally when you build out solutions for your employees or partners, but also, of course, when you build new customer-facing solutions, assembling like Lego pieces, so to speak, these new solutions, often in an open innovation context. So really great insights and good examples. I think maybe to frame the further conversation, simplifying with technology, using these types of services is what many are doing today. In preparing this session, I scouted the landscape, what are organizations doing around the world, and there are some very encouraging examples of people coming together across industries. In Germany last week, some 42,000 developers came together in an open hackathon context, virtually, of course, utilizing open APIs like the ones that you showed, Ido, to craft and create new types of solutions and services across sectors. Worldwide, we also see hospitals, for example, turning to crowdsourcing and 3D printing amid equipment shortages, and also, I mean, across the public sector, local cities, regions, quickly creating new online services that enable younger to volunteer, helping elderly in the community and the elderly to request assistance. So APIs are obviously core and center to making all of this happen. Ido, what are your lessons learned, so to speak, to rapidly go from idea to solution, like when the Lego pieces of APIs are in that mix, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing or the biggest opportunity with APIs is making or giving access more easily to developers within the organization. And I'll explain. I think for many developers working in large organizations, there's a big pro but a big con as well. The pro or the benefit is the organization has a lot of data, it has a lot of pre-built functionality and a lot of tools that you can tie into. But traditionally, the difficulty around that, or the challenge associated with it, is all of these tools are pretty hard to access, or the data sets are pretty hard to access, both from a technical perspective, because they each are in a different place, but also from a bureaucracy and process perspective. And that means that when you want to innovate, you have a lot of potential because you can leverage all that data and all that functionality, but you need to knock on a lot of doors before you can actually get access to it. What we're seeing companies doing with APIs is actually breaking those silos and changing that, because now all of the data is exposed through APIs. You put all these APIs in a catalog or a hub like Rapid, so everybody can very easily access those APIs. And now developers can, in more of a self-service way, consume data and functionality and start building and innovating on top of it. And I think that in terms of setting up the infrastructure to be able to support that kind of level of innovation or pace of innovation, the more self-service access you can give to developers and the ability for them to execute without needing too many meetings or to knock on too many doors, the easier it will be for them to innovate and create new products.
So, Michiel, I mean, this brings into the conversation somewhat the wider concepts like open innovation, two-sided markets, crafting a business model around the fact that in a digital ecosystem or in a digital context, so to speak, multiple organizations are kind of sharing not only like the customer, but also the infrastructure. So there are all these business model topics on the table as well, API economy, quote unquote. How do we navigate all of this?
Well, thanks for this simple question. But let me take a shot at it. So there are a couple of things, I think. So what you see, and of course it's difficult to say that what is the starting point. It's kind of the chicken and the egg. So I think APIs and an API integration strategy, creating a unified platform, actually creates opportunities to find new ways of working together with partners outside of the organization, right? Because as to exposing APIs internally, more and more organizations are starting to expose APIs externally to create this open innovation kind of way of working. Now, at the same time, I think because we have customers that are so spoiled, I would say, their expectations are so enormously high about the experience that you're offering, everything has to be immediate, right? It has to be now. You don't have time anymore to organize things yourself. So the way how you now deliver value is fast value, is immediate value. And to do that, you need to connect to many, many players in an ecosystem around a need of a customer. So now, of course, it's very difficult to say what created what, right? Is it the demand, the pull from the market for new, faster, accelerated business models? Or is it the other way around? Does the technology create the opportunity for business models? Now, but for me, it's clear, if you want to accelerate the level of innovation in your organization, you have to reach outside of your organization for two very simple reasons. One, there are always more smart people outside of your organization than you have inside of your organization. Not to say that we don't have smart people in our organizations, but at an internet scale, at the global scale, of course, there are many, many more smart people with very, very good ideas. And how do you get those smart people to help you speed up, accelerate, and prevent you from inventing the wheel over again? Now, platforms are very smart in that, because that's what they leverage, right? They leverage the fact that you have many, many resources in the world that you can actually leverage. And if you can organize it efficiently, find a new combination between supply and demand,
Right.
you become a very strong player.
Yeah. So I think we're conscious of time. We're at 9:47, and I before we come close to wrapping it up, I want to just make sure that you all know that you can ask questions in the interface here, the Q&A interface, and maybe we should just go into that list of questions.
I already saw some very interesting ones coming around.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we'll take a step of some of these. Uri asks, Mikhail spoke at the beginning about innovation at the core. How do you translate this to technology? What's your take on that? How do you translate that to technology?
Yeah. So I think that, as far as I understand the question, I talked about innovation at the core of the organization, right? So don't try to innovate at a secondary process somewhere far away in the safe environment of the HR function or whatever. Try to innovate where it matters, where it actually makes a difference to the business. That's what I meant with innovating at the core. Then when I talk about this issue of how do you make sure that you create innovation at the core, it's all about this simplicity. And the problems with the word simplicity is that people think it's the same as simple. And of course, that's not true. The most simple things to use, like a car, they're extremely complex. They're extremely, they're not simple at all. But the way that you can use it, the way that you can leverage it has become extremely simple. Because you have very simple, well, in IT, we call them APIs, but in my car, I call it my steering wheel and my transmission shift and my gas pedal and my brake. Those are the APIs of the car. They are extremely simple. And by using those simple APIs in my car, I can get this very complex machine doing exactly what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Do you have a take on that, Ido?
Yeah, I think I really want to applaud Mikhail on that first point on innovation has to be in the core and just echo that, because I think that a lot of people, when they hear about innovation, they have this, maybe this little bad taste or this negative experience thinking of, oh, we'll do something nice in the periphery of the company, off to the side and in a safe environment, as you said, Mikhail, and see how that plays. But if you actually see where it's successful, it's when your business is at risk. You know that you have to be paranoid and innovate and change the business in order to survive in a changing economy, and that's when you actually can innovate in a meaningful way. And that's where we kind of see innovation, or true innovation, stemming out of.
Right. Okay.
That's the burning platform, right?
That's
what they say. Never let a crisis go to waste. I mean, and that's what I meant with my words at the beginning about adapt and overcome. Of course, we first improvise, but then when the crisis is big enough, we understand that we have to change things. And so, of course, it's a very unfortunate crisis, but this crisis will bring a lot of necessary change. I saw one question coming around. It disappeared again, about how do you simplify globalization, which is a very fascinating question, right? What will this corona crisis do to our so much intertwined, connected economies, right? Would it actually create a movement against globalization? It's quite interesting. Now, I don't know the answer, but it's a very interesting question.
So let's see. I'll take two more questions and then we'll be wrapping up the first Go Live session. The second last question would be, what are the top 3 help needed requests you're getting in this COVID-19 environment? So the top 3 help needed requests. And I'll take a first stab at this, what we're seeing from the AIE, the Applied Innovation Exchange network. Obviously, the framing is to, of course, stay aligned to the organization's core values. So that's kind of the framing. The three help needed is help us go from physical to digital. So in this context where physical interaction is not safe, how do we engage with our employees or our customers digitally? Help us transform quickly in a meaningful and impactful way. The second help needed request often refers to how do we continue to collaborate internally and with customers, so that they're working from home kind of thing. So exploring and evaluating different types of methods to collaborate digitally. And the third is, I think, a continuum of the conversation we had before COVID-19 with which relates to automation, like the smart enterprise, the connected enterprise, and automation. How can we accelerate processes using technology to get things done quicker, to respond quicker, to get insights of what's happening quicker into decision making. So those, from my perspective, would be like the three help needed. What are your reflections, Michiel and Ido?
Well, what I hear a lot is help me figure out how this Zoom application works, or how this Office 365 application works, because of course we use like 5% of the functionality, but now suddenly, because it becomes not a nice to have, but a must have, we have to explore all this 95% of additional functionality to help us collaborate and be effective in the digital sphere as we used to be in the physical sphere, right? So that's the main question. How do we keep going? How do we keep our processes going? And how do we make better use of the tools that we already have?
Yeah, Ido, do you have any insights there?
Yeah, I know. I feel like you two are having much more interesting conversations. People are just asking me about toilet paper.
Toilet paper.
Yes. But yeah, no, I think a lot of where it meets us, frankly, with the companies that we engage with is, thinking about their engineering and development forces, and thinking about transitioning these pretty abruptly to remote work, in some of the tooling and collaboration. So I think it's that same collaboration thread, just very specifically tied to the engineering and development space.
Okay.
Now, one more point, Andreas. The other thing that I find very, very important is, of course, now that we are all dispersed and all in our homes and all across the world with all these work stay-at-home orders, what about security? So how do we make sure that we don't introduce all kinds of security leaks, because suddenly our plane of possible attacks has increased tremendously. So we have to make sure that we also stay safe from a security point of view.
All right. So thank you so much. We're coming close to top of the hour. I want to thank both of you, Michiel and Ido, for your thoughtful remarks and your input, your conversation. It's been encouraging and very helpful. And also to all of you in the audience, attendees, thank you for joining us today, this Go Live session. We have many more Go Live sessions lined up. Next one is already next week on March 31st, where we will be joined by Ron Toledo, and we are collaborating also with many of our global partners to get their points of views and their experiences in this situation. So be sure to register for our next Go Live session and engage with us on capgemini.com/innovation. We wish you all the best, and most importantly, to you and your families, stay safe. Thank you.